You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Get ready with me for day 5 of my Pilates challenge and then a casual work from home day. I really want to be comfy today, so I'm going to go with my new Steady State set from Lululemon. I went for the matching hoodie and sweats. I love layering them over workout clothes, especially for early morning classes. The fabric, I believe it's called Superloft, is so soft on the outside and fleecy on the inside. Obsessed. Anyway, that's the vibe for today. See you next time. Shop the new Steady State Superloft now at Lululemon.com.
Picture this, a curve in the road, a change in plans. Well, what do you say? With the all-new Audi Q3, the answer's always yes. Yes to adventure. Yes to escape. Yes to performance. Yes to comfort. Yes to right now. Because saying yes without hesitation, that's real luxury. The all-new Audi Q3, made for the yes life.
This episode is brought to you by our Patreon members. Thank you so much.
Join our Patreon for extra episodes, interviews, extra content, and to help support the podcast and help us continue to do the work we do.
Go to patreon.com/ancienthistoryfangirl to learn more. The beast hammered at her, drank her blood, and ate her guts. It's snowing again. It's been snowing all week. All week the driving snow and the sleet and the ice, and it's almost May. You wrap your cloak around you and try to think warm thoughts as you watch the cattle paw at the frozen ground. Their ribs stand out against their hides. You know how they feel. You've eaten nothing since yesterday. A little bread and milk. A terrible hollow feeling gnaws at your belly. You didn't want to come out today. But your mother is still bedbound since the baby came, and your father had to go on the road and look for odd jobs, roof repairs and carpentry and whatever he could set his hands to, so the family doesn't starve. There is none to tend the cattle but you. A gust of wind hits you sideways and steals your breath. You have not stopped shivering since you got here. Now the sun is about to go down. Your feet are so cold you've stopped feeling them. You wrapped your soaked cloak around yourself and shiver, your teeth chattering. You shift your feet and glance again at the forest. Mist gathers and swirls at the base of the trees. You feel like you are being watched. There is a monster in these woods. The rumors came just last week of a boy gone missing, found miles away with his limbs scattered bloody around a field just like this one. A girl snatched from her own front yard and her throat ripped out. On Sunday, the priest said nobody should tend the herds alone, begged women and children to go in groups, but you have no one to go with. You pleaded with your father not to send you alone, but he said you have no choice. There is no one else but you. You're only 9 and a girl, your father said solemnly, and this all seems too big for you, but we all must do what we must. And he left you with his bayonet, a long stick he whittled himself, with one of your mother's kitchen knives attached to the end. Hardly a fearsome weapon. Even so, you cling to it now, your hands too frozen to unclench. The day is fading, and so are you. You're exhausted and hungry and tired. You start to move toward the herd, to gather them up for the trip home through the broad pastures. One of the calves has wandered too close to the woods. You start to go in that direction. The light has faded. Everything feels dim and strange. Something about that line of trees makes your skin crawl, as if something there is watching, waiting. But you can't leave the calf behind. You go as fast as you can manage on your numb, hurting feet. The calf is lowing and crying for its mother. The wind snatches its cries. You call to it, try to get around it and herd it back to its family. The shadow of the trees falls over you. You stop. The sound of the howling wind fades to an eerie silence. There are 2 pinpricks of light in the trees, like twin lamps, fires. A huge shape emerges from the shadows between the trees. An animal, like a wolf, but not a wolf. It's enormous. Its eyes seem to glow with their own dark witch light. It pulls its lips back, revealing long, bloody fangs. You can feel its growl deep in your bones. There is a heart-shaped mark on its chest. Behind you, the cows are calling. It is the warning for danger. Your instincts are screaming to run, but you can't. Your feet are frozen to the icy ground as slowly, the monster creeps forward out of the trees, its sharp teeth bared in its bloody mouth and the white heart shape on its chest. At the last minute, you close your eyes. That white heart rises out of the dark, seared on the backs of your eyelids. It is all you can see. It's the last thing you see before the end. I'm Jenny Williamson.
And I have not been eaten by a werewolf, thankfully. But I'm Jen McMenemy.
Yet. And this is Ancient History Fangirl.
A werewolf edition.
So, we have gathered here today to tell you a story that comes from southeastern France, a brutal, mysterious story that we alluded to vaguely in our Catholic Werewolves episode, and which Jen chose not to pursue any deeper at that time. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I got so much shit from Jenny for not going deeper into this rabbit hole that we're going to tell you about in a minute, because I was like, Jenny, this is really complicated. I don't want to just do a rush job. The Catholic Werewolves episode is already like 30 pages. I can't. I'll have to come back to it. And Jenny was like, but this is the one I really wanted to know about. And I was like, well, then maybe you should do an episode on it.
This is Jen's stock answer when I'm like, Jen, you should cover this. She's like, no, you should cover it.
I mean, in this instance, I think Jenny will back me up. It was such a big rabbit hole that it actually is going to be 2 episodes. And I couldn't fit anything else into that episode. Like there was no time. That would have been like a 4-parter.
Yeah, no, I was really excited to hear about the Beast of the Gevaudan because I thought that would be in it, but it was not. And I get why, because as Jen said,
I glossed over it. I mentioned it, but I didn't go into it.
You alluded to it. But there was a lot of other good stuff in that episode, which I would argue is a lot less well known and still really fascinating, and I think provides important context for this one. So I'm glad that we got it all in.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I thought. I was like, these are actually stories I didn't know. They're less well known, but they're super fascinating, and they happened in different places. I think maybe 1 or 2 were in France. A bunch were in like Germany or other places in Western Europe. And I was like, to try to get the Beast of the Gevaudan here, I will be writing this episode until Christmas. And then Jenny will be like, well, we missed Halloween. So what are you doing?
And we missed Halloween again. Look at that.
Well, we did. But the reality is we talked about it, and you'll hear this, or you'll have seen this already. We decided to theme October and November as our spooky months, as our autumn months. We had October's theme was ghostly encounters and natural disasters. And this month's theme has been The Beast You've Made of Me, starting with an interview about Medusa from the author of I, Medusa, Ayanna Gray, and ending with our 2-parter on The Beast of the Gevaudan. So I actually think that you got a good deal, all my spooky season friends.
I think so. I think it's worked out perfectly. Yeah, so I was going to mention that I completely understand why Jen did not cover the Beast of the Gevaudan in the Catholic Werewolves episode, because it is a very, very deep rabbit hole with lots of twists and turns and branching passages, which we are going to cover exhaustingly in the next 2 episodes, don't you worry. Did you know that in an area in southeastern France called the Gevaudan, for 3 whole years, this area was beset by attacks from a mysterious beast? Some say it was a wolf, others that it was like a wolf, but not a wolf. Far stronger, faster, more brutal, and more intelligent than other wolves. Still others provided much more strange and otherworldly descriptions that did not resemble a wolf at all.
To this day, the Beast of the Gevaudan is one of the seminal cryptid mysteries. Werewolf mythology was still developing at this time, or werewolf mythology as we think of it today.
Western werewolf mythology, that's mainly what this applies to.
Yeah, because you'll have seen in other episodes, even older Western werewolf mythology, like in our Ancient Werewolf episodes, which we dropped already, had been developing. And obviously there's Eastern and, all kinds of other places throughout the world that have their own werewolf mythology. But anyway, werewolf mythology, as we know it today, was still developing at this time. And in the 1800s and beyond, tales of the Beast of the Gevaudan formed the foundation for modern werewolf stories that we tell today. For instance, this is where the myth that a werewolf isn't susceptible to normal bullets, that they must be felled by a silver bullet, This is where that myth comes from. Isn't that fascinating? So, make yourself a glass of your favorite beverage. I'm going to, in a minute, make myself some pumpkin pie apple cider, hard cider. I'm going to do the whole cinnamon on the rim and everything. I'm going to do that in a minute. So I encourage you to do the same with whatever you like to imbibe. Pull up a chair by the fire and join us as we tell you all about the beast of the Gevaudan.
So let's zoom out for a moment to give you a picture of where we are. We've covered this region before a little bit in our Catholic Werewolves episode, which I mentioned before, where we discussed the werewolf trials of medieval France. The Beast of the Gevaudan takes place in the context of that, and we will get to that context as we tell you this story. Don't worry, I'm really covering everything. The Gevaudan is just a tiny corner of the place and time period that episode covered. The year was 1764. France had just, the year prior, lost the 7 Years' War, a devastating defeat that crippled its navy, caused it to lose vast swaths of New World territories, and humiliated the country on the international stage. Add to that, Europe had been plunged into a little ice age that had been going on for several centuries by now. The continent had been gripped by paranoia for centuries as well that had led to rashes of witch trials and werewolf trials, probably all exacerbated by the starving times.
Things were not great in France, but things were especially not great in the Gevaudan. This was an area beset by poverty, with soil that was not great for farming. The geography of the region made the weather particularly nasty. And even in the summer months, the region was beset by snow, mist, and vicious pounding rain. Most people relied on herding, as well as any odd jobs they could find and whatever they could grow in backyard gardens to survive. And survival was not looking great right now. Remember, Little Ice Age. Accounts of the time point to widespread hunger and degradation in this time period. These were hard, cold, hungry years. Things were desperate even before the Beast of the Gevaudan came to town. And the unique conditions of the Gevaudan had a huge effect on how this all played out, which we will unpack as we go.
We will. And just a heads up, I'm about to get into it. There is going to be a lot of blood and violence and gore, mainly directed at women and children and potentially wolves, going on in this episode, and I am not going to spare the details. I realize that is not for everybody. Here is your chance to bow out right now.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to give you much more of a warning than this because the whole thing is pretty gory and we do have to talk about it.
And I really do feel like it's important to cover all the details because I really want you to get the sense of the terror and the violence and what these people were facing and what they went through. And this is all details that are readily available whenever anybody Googles this.
Yeah, and it's important too because particularly in the second episode, we're going to talk about how the press covered this and the sensationalism that happened and stuff like that. So you do actually need to know these details. We're not just giving you murder porn.
Not to mention the beast hunting methods and what that could tell us about what it actually was. So we will be talking about all of that.
Yeah, it all forms a picture of what the time period looked like and what the beast may or may not have been. So yeah. With that said, please go on, Ms. Williamson.
The first recorded attack occurred in the summer of 1764. A young woman named Marie-Jeanne Vallée was tending her cattle on the edge of the forest near the town of Lingon on the eastern side of the Gevaudan. A great beast charged out of the forest and attacked her. Her herd of cattle formed a defensive ring around her, and the bulls drove the beast away. She would later describe the beast as, quote, like a wolf, but not a wolf.
I love that the cattle were like, and the bulls were like, you're not going to fuck with our girl. Those are some good herd animals.
Right. And that's actually really interesting because the cattle were treating her like she was one of the herd. You know, it's kind of neat.
It's really neat. And I was going to say that too. They're treating her like she is one of the herd. She's one of the babies.
This girl got lucky. Many others would not. The first recorded death came just a month later. A 14-year-old girl, Jeanne Boulet, was found mauled and eviscerated near the village of Saint-Étienne-de-Lugdare, about 11 miles away. And this is actually an episode where I get to pronounce things in French, which is exciting for me.
And I get to struggle and Jenny gets to correct me. So this is exciting for me.
I'll help you out. Yeah. I tried to learn to speak French. I never got to be quite fluent, but I really did try very hard. Apologies to anyone who actually speaks French.
It's hot. Julius Caesar would say it's hot. So would Cucullin.
Awesome. That's what I aim for, really. To please the ghosts.
That's your only job.
Yeah, that's my real audience. That's my target market, dead people. Anyway, Jean Boulet is usually listed as the first death and sometimes the first official victim of the beast of the Gevaudan, but the way her death certificate was written implies that there were perhaps other victims before her. That said, wolf attacks in this area were not unusual. The Gevaudan was a rocky, mountainous region with thin soil. At this time, as I've said, it was ravaged by poverty and not a great place to farm. Most who lived here scratched out a living herding, and that herding was generally the work of women and children. So, a lot of women and children, boys and girls, were just out there, huddled in their cloaks, shivering by themselves in the rain, in the snow, in the little ice age, outside the dark forests of Gevaudan, herding cattle and goats and sheep in isolated areas. Wolf bait.
Yeah, in short, they were wolf bait. That is my nightmare, Jenny. I've told the podcast before about my terrifying, debilitating fear of werewolves, particularly as a child. Like, maybe in a past life, I was in the Gevaudan and I was one of the beast victims, because I'm telling you, werewolves are like my major like horror trigger. And I understand as an adult why that is, but I'm like, maybe in a past life. My woo-woo side is coming out as I get older. So, wolves were plentiful in this area, and most people assumed that these first attacks, while tragic, were done by normal wolves. However, the attacks kept piling up. A 15-year-old girl was mauled, her throat ripped open, near Port-le-Rond. With her last breath, she described a terrible beast. Then a young boy went missing near the village of Laval. They found his body partially eaten off in the hills, far from where he disappeared. Here is a description of the events taking place in the ramp-up of 1764, from roughly June to October of that year, found on a blog called betugevaudan.com. What a name.
Do you want the murder porn first, or do you want me to explain about the website first, Jen?
I think give me a little description about the website and then get into that murder porn. That's what people are still listening for.
So the thing about sources for this episode is that there are a lot of articles out there that you can Google that are in English that are kind of like just sort of a very short summary, essentially, of basically 4 years of activity. The real original sources are in French from the 1700s, and they are reams and reams and reams of newspaper articles and death certificates and things from the Gevaudan, and also newspaper articles from like all over Europe, really, because it became an international news story. There are some books and scholarly articles, mostly in French. There was one book for a popular audience that I found, actually a couple. The other source that I found that was quite valuable were these sort of blog websites from basically citizen historians, you know, just people who were beast enthusiasts, mostly French, who collected a lot of these original sources and translated and gave us some of them on these blogs and websites. So you can find that if you look for it, and betugevaudan.com is one of them. So he's quoting here from various newspapers and kind of summarizing from there, so it's a little bit more detailed than the typical accounts you get. So I'm going to read you a quote from that website, and this is kind of like a roundup of a bunch of news articles from this time period, and I am reading you this because I want you to get a sense of the sheer terror and just the volume of what was happening. So, here we go. Quote, on June 30th, in Saint-Étienne-de-Lugdale, Vivarais, it devoured a maiden of 14 years old. On August 8th, it attacks a girl of Port-le-Rond, Gevaudan, and tears her apart. 3 15-year-old boys from Chéla-l'Évêque, a woman from Arsène, a little girl from Tours, and a shepherd from Chaudeirac, good Lord, are found dead. Their bodies are terribly mutilated and are barely recognizable. In September, a man from Choisnier, a woman from Apcher disappear. Their remains and their rags are found scattered in open country and in woods. On October 8th, a young man from Puget returns home, terrified, half dead. He has met the beast in an orchard, and it slashed his scalp and his chest. 2 days later, the forehead of a 13-year-old child is slashed and his scalp ripped off. On October 19th, a 20-year-old maiden is found horribly torn to pieces around Saint-Albin. The beast hammered at her, drank her blood, and ate her guts.
I'm so glad you gave this to yourself.
The werewolves were not all nice and fuzzy.
I mean, werewolves are never nice and fuzzy. Like, they are in, like, hot paranormal romances and some romanticities, but, like, in general, unless it's in that genre, they're not nice and fuzzy.
This is one of the places it comes from, and it is not nice and fuzzy. It's what's underneath it.
So, as we were saying, the attacks, as you can see, kept piling up. Descriptions of the beast poured in, and they were confusing and conflicting. Some described it as just a big wolf. Others described it as abnormally large for a wolf, perhaps the size of a calf, with a broad chest like a horse's chest, a mouth bristling with canine-looking teeth, burning or sparkling eyes, and a shaggy reddish mane with a dark dorsal stripe running down its spine. Some described a heart-shaped mark on its chest. It was said to move with almost supernatural speed. Accounts claimed that it stood on its hind legs, that it could not be killed with normal weapons, that it seemed to be in several places at the same time. You know what this sounds like to me, Jenny? It's a Kelpie.
No.
It's a Kelpie. That's a Kelpie.
It's not, Jen. It's not tied to water at all.
It rains so much there, it could be a Kelpie.
I guess if you count, like, the little ice age is just making everything a Kelpie environment, sure.
It's got a dorsal fin. Why does it have a dorsal fin if it's not a Kelpie?
You know, there are some people who believe that it was scaled like a fish, so, I don't know.
I mean, I'm always gonna, rock Team Kelpie because I feel like they're one of those, monsters that are really, don't get their due enough. Continuing on, the beast went primarily for women and children, although it sometimes targeted lone men. It attacked people tending their herds, as these people tended to be isolated in the meadows and near the forests where the beast hung out, smoking your cigarettes after class. But sometimes the beast ventured far closer to civilization. Some were attacked and killed just steps from the doors of their houses.
Even stranger, the beast seemed far more interested in attacking humans than herd animals. The beast tended to go for the head and neck, ripping open throats and often decapitating its victims. Sometimes it scalped people with its teeth. More than once, a skull was found a good distance away from the body of a victim, cracked open as if the beast was trying to get to the brain. It did not so much eat its victims as rip them apart. Severed limbs and heads and gnawed-on torsos and pieces of clothing were often found scattered all over its kill sites. Some people wondered if it ate its victims at all. One newspaper at the time described the beast's feeding habits as, quote, seizing its unfortunate victims by the nape of the neck, choking the life out of them, and drinking their blood before separating the head from the trunk of the body. Sometimes it was described as eating the neck all the way down to the shoulders and drinking the blood. That was weird. Is that not weird?
Yeah, that's what I find so strange, Jenny. Why not just go for the cows or the sheep or anything but the human with the pointy stick? It feels kind of like they're conflating what we will take on as modern vampire mythology and werewolf mythology. But also and we'll talk about this more later, I have so many thoughts about the places the beast is choosing to attack and rip through, make me wonder about the condition of the beast's sort of state of being, mental health,
I love that you're I wonder about the beast's mental health.
I guess I wonder more about if it had some kind of dementia or rabies, or there isn't usually rabies.
Rabies is a good question. So anyway, that was weird. All of this was weird. Adding to the weirdness was that these attacks tended to happen far apart, on opposite sides of difficult terrain, and seemingly very close together in time, even simultaneously. Either this beast could teleport, or there was more than one of them.
With picky eaters, every meal feels like a negotiation. Smarty Pants fills common gaps with 16 nutrients, even when veggies are a no-go. With 33% more nutrients than the second leading product and brain health support, it's the #1 kids gummy multi. Grab Smarty Pants on Amazon or at Target or Walmart today. Brain health support from key nutrients. This statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
With Venmo Stash, a toggle on one hand and ordering a ride in the other means you're stacking cash back. With Venmo Stash, get up to 5% cash back when you pick a bundle of your favorite brands. Earn more cash when you do more with Stash. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply. Max $100 cash back per month. See terms at venmo.me/stash terms.
If you're chasing data down instead of seeing it in one place, you need the Intuit ERP. Intuit Enterprise Suite. All your data in one place with built-in AI for real-time insights. Learn more at intuit.com/ERP.
By the fall and winter of 1764, the countryside of Gevaudan was in a panic. Women and children were advised not to go out at all, or if they did, to go in groups for protection. Advice that was rarely followed because this was a poor area and herding was the main economic activity. People couldn't afford to just stay at home, and a lot of times they couldn't afford to go in groups. Like, you had a job and you worked that job the way you did because of necessity. By October, the countryside was mobilized. Local groups were organized to find and flush out the beast. This was an effort led by a regional official named Etienne Lafont, who, as early as October that year, tried to establish a regional, quote-unquote, permanent hunt in each parish. This proved not to be an easy ask. Time spent hunting was time spent away from the herds and the family's livelihood. Plus, Lafont wrote to his superior at the time that most of the villagers were, quote-unquote, too timid and didn't want to range too far afield, unless led by professional hunters with guns. Now, peasants at this time were not allowed to own guns or even swords. And this might have been like in an effort to suppress peasant revolts, but that's not the only reason, and it's super complicated. We're not going to get into it right now.
Yeah, it is actually really complicated about, like, in Europe in general, not just in this area in particular, like, who was allowed to own what weapons and when. Like, some of it was, like, a status thing. Like, in ancient Rome, what kind of fabric you were allowed to wear, what colors. There was that going on, and these rules were changing a lot. But at this particular time in this place, peasants were not allowed to own guns or swords, and that was one of the complicating factors.
Yeah, they didn't have anything to hunt the beast with except very rudimentary weapons, which is a problem in this instance. So, Lafont started paying 20 sous a day to anyone willing to take up the hunt.
For the first few months of the beast's bloody reign, there was a leadership gap. But by fall, a local captain of dragoons, Captain Jean-Baptiste Duhamel, stepped up, volunteered, or perhaps was voluntold, to serve as lead huntsman as early as the 29th of October. At first, there was a lot of optimism here. Duhamel wrote to his superiors about how soon he'd have the pleasure of delivering the beast's corpse to them and ridding the region of a terrible scourge. He was only about 32 at the time. He was a baby. And from his letters, we get a sense of wide-eyed gallantry, a guy who wanted to be everything his superiors wanted most. Loyal, competent, dependable, the guy for every job. But over the course of 3 months, this cutie was going to be broken. He was going to age like 10 years. Get excited.
Duhamel led his men in hunt after hunt. Differing accounts say he marshaled from 300 to 20,000 locals to scour the countryside. But every time he came up short. Reports of individual hunts reveal comedies of errors and just plain bad luck. One problem was that the dragoons just didn't actually encounter the beast very often. And when they did, time and again, Duhamel writes of kills foiled by the blundering incompetence of his men. Every time someone had the beast in his sights, some doofus would pop out of the bushes and scare the beast into running in a different direction. In addition, the rifles constantly misfired or their shots would go wild. One thing hampering Duhamel and his men was the types of guns used during this time were notoriously finicky and not very accurate. It was easy to misfire, they were difficult to load and aim, and a breath of humidity could render the gunpowder useless. The weather worked against them. The Gevaudan, at this time, as we've mentioned, was in a little ice age. The forecast here in the Gevaudan was constant snow and rain, even through the summer.
Another thing you have to understand when thinking about the conditions these hunters were dealing with is that the terrain here is extremely rugged. The area of the Gevaudan was and is geologically once a massive lava field or series of lava fields stemming from ancient volcanic eruptions, Jen. I thought you'd like this part.
Yeah, because clearly the beast is a volcano because all the things go back to volcanoes, even maybe the beginning of the world. Fight me.
Jen has some wild theories. She has some real interesting hills that she is prepared to die on today.
Oh, no.
The highlands of the Gevaudan are populated by enormous granite outcrops. The subsoil is rocky and impermeable to water, meaning there are lots of ponds, swamps, bogs, and small lakes amidst meadows and forested areas. And the air was extremely foggy, humid, and rainy. That's true in general, but add to that snowy in the Little Ice Age period. The Cantal Massif, a mountain range that runs through the territory, acts as a wall, trapping clouds and shrouding the area in mist, further hampering visibility. The region is already frequently cold and misty year-round. But during this time, Europe was in the grip of a little ice age. I'm not going to stop saying that. And hunters had to contend with thick driving snow, freezing cold and hail, as well as thick mist and constant rain. And adding to that difficulty, in the Gevaudan at this time, things were so underdeveloped that several sources have told me there were no roads.
So, as you can imagine, the hunting parties struggled. Swamps and ponds and waterlogged grounds stymied large horseback search parties. All that damp made rifles misfire or not fire at all. Visibility was terrible. People were freezing and wet all the time. And there were endless ravines, forests, mountains, and rocky bouldery hideaways for the beast to hide in. He was good at his job. He was good at beasting. Duhamel led the hunt over a 3-month period spanning November, December, and January, the worst weather season, in the worst time to be out in the cold, right? He wrote frequently of being stymied by weather, losing the beast in the fog, struggling with hip-deep snow, and having to pack it in due to the freezing rain. His men were exhausted and cold all the time, and frequently he had to sleep in unheated barns, on hard floors, and in piles of hay after long and unsuccessful days of hunting in brutal, punishing weather. And, as we've mentioned, the muskets were constantly misfiring or not firing at all. Frequently, moisture from rain and snow dampened the powder and kept anyone from getting off a shot, which seemed to happen inevitably when the beast was there and gave rise to myths about the beast being able to put a spell on guns.
Duhamel was also hampered by the locals. I've written before about the locals being, quote, too timid, by some people's opinion, to really go after the beast. And as Duhamel tried to marshal locals in these efforts, because this is what those big hunts depended on, is lots of local people joining in. Like the relationship between Duhamel and the local people may have been an issue. He had to rely on local manpower, and the locals just weren't reliable, by his account. They would promise to join a hunt and then not show up. Soon, Duhamel's relationships with the peasantry started to fray. J. Smith, author of Monsters of the Gevaudan, Making of a Beast, he explains that as Duhamel kept striking out, he was increasingly willing to use creative, out-of-the-box methods. For instance, one time he asked villagers to supply his men with women's clothes and wigs. The plan was to dress them up as women and have them escort children into the fields with their herds, under the theory that the beast mainly attacked women and children.
It turns out that the locals didn't love seeing their kids being used as bait. This cross-dressing plan failed spectacularly. The beast stayed away all the days that the dragoons were out there disguised in the fields, in their dresses, with their wigs, popping those hips and walking that runway, living their best life.
Let's be clear, the dragoons looked real fierce, but it did not fool the beast.
Yes. And when they left, the beast attacked a child in that very same area. And another time, under the assumption that the beast always returned to the scene of the crime, Duhamel started insisting that grieving families hold off on burying the savaged remains of their loved ones for 48 hours so he could use their corpses as bait. This also proved to be ineffective. And I'm just going to stop here for a minute and remind you, we're not so far away from resurrection men like Burke and Hare, and at this point in time, a lot of Christians, not just Catholics, believe that you had to bury the body all together as one, because when the rapture came, when the resurrection came, if you weren't sort of all together in one place, buried at the right time, you wouldn't get to ascend to heaven. So this is really difficult for them.
It's difficult too, because a lot of these victims were ripped apart. So probably was not that easy to find all the bits sometimes.
And also just traumatic to see parts of your child being hung up as meat, right? It's awful.
Obviously, everything about this is terrible. But Duhamel was also being particularly callous about people's grief in this moment.
Yeah, he'd clearly had it and felt that if the locals were more helpful, then maybe this would be done and he wouldn't have to resort to this, is my guess.
They just weren't being cooperative.
So the locals obviously hated this practice. It went against their traditions about burying the dead. It struck them as disrespectful to just leave corpses out there like that for days, again, as bait. And as word spread of how Duhamel treated the bodies of the recently slain, families stopped reporting beast attacks to the authorities, and they started burying victims quickly and in secret. Duhamel flew into rages upon hearing of local families who failed to report a death or buried a victim too soon, even jailing at least one grieving father. This tanked his relationship with the locals even further. Shocker. And I have so many questions about why he would think putting rotting corpses out there would attract a beast who clearly likes fresh kill.
I think he's just getting desperate at this point, just like try anything. Meanwhile, reports of beast attacks continued to trail in. One woman was murdered by the beast as it lay in wait between two buildings on her property. It leaped upon her as she passed and ripped her head off. 2 days after a failed hunt, 3 miles away from the place where the beast escaped, a young man was found bleeding, scalped, and his side ripped open. The same day, a girl was found miles away with her arm and face savaged. A milkmaid's corpse was found in a field, her clothing shredded. The litany of brutalized victims marched grimly on. Newspapers printed fantastical reports about the beast's appearance and strange behavior. Some reported it was far too big to be a wolf. It had a large head like a pig. Its mouth always gaped open. Its hind legs were horse hooves. It was sometimes seen to walk on its hind legs and even play. It seemed to have a bizarrely playful side. It crossed rivers in 2 or 3 jumps. It walked on water. Some people swore they heard it speak or even laugh. Some claimed it was a witch, a sorcerer, a loup-garou, a werewolf.
There are a few victims of the beast of the Gevaudan who are very well documented. One is Jacques Portefax. He was born to a family that used to be relatively well off, but had fallen into debt and poverty with 8 children to feed because, Catholics and birth control. Jacques came from a family of 6 boys and 2 girls. The attack took place on January 12th, 1765. By now, women and children were heavily advised not to go out and tend the herds. If they did go out, they were urged to go in groups. Most people couldn't afford to just not tend their livestock, so this was what a lot of people had to do. It was what Jacques was doing that day. He was with a group of 7 children, 5 boys and 2 girls, all within the ages of 8 to 12. Jacques was one of the older kids. He was aged about 10 or 12. I mean, we say older, and he's just a baby.
Yeah, but he was one of the older kids in that group. And that's kind of how these stories go. Like, even if you look at the Catholic werewolves and, the kids who tend to be victims in even things like fairy tales, and folk tales, it tends to be about kids this age, right? And we talked about the reasons for that in the Catholic werewolves episode. Not a coincidence here. So here's how it went down. On January 12th, 7 children from the village of Villaret, 5 boys and 2 girls between the ages of roughly 8 and 12, had banded together to herd their cattle. They had brought with them some makeshift spears, each kid carrying a long stick with a knife attached to it about 4 inches long and sharp, just in case. This was the typical type of weapon the peasants were allowed to carry in this region at the time. A lot of people who wound up fighting the beast were documented as having these sort of makeshift bayonets, which is basically like a stick with a kitchen knife tied to the end. They never saw the beast coming until it was right on top of them. The 7 children immediately circled up, making a defensive formation, with the biggest boys, Portefax and 2 others, on the outside, the girls, who were in the middle in terms of age, in the next row in, and then the 2 smallest boys in the center. So they were protecting the littlest kids.
Do you know how they were doing that? Just like the herd of the cows did.
The beast circled them, stalked them, and the children moved with it, poking at it with their sticks, desperately trying to keep it away with their spears.
Finally, the beast lunged, penetrated the center of the circle, seized one of the youngest boys, and ripped off a piece of his cheek. Which cheek? His face or his bum-bum?
It was the face cheek.
I was going to say, if it's his cheek, that makes sense. They call it the sweetmeats.
I think you're not appreciating the horror of this moment.
You mean me adding levity isn't appreciating the horror? No.
It's a child's face getting ripped off by this beast.
As we've said, probably me. In a past life.
But this one lived, so probably not. You're one of the anonymous ones that just appears in a list.
I'm one of those anonymous girls in a list. So, the older children leaped on the beast, stabbing at it with their spears. Their little knives could not pierce its thick hide. Somehow, they managed to force the beast to let go of the boy and ran it off a few feet. But it turned out they'd only made it mad. The beast chewed and swallowed the cheek of the youngest boy right in front of these children, their faces slack with horror. Then the beast lunged again, through the circle, grabbed the other youngest boy by his arm, and dragged him off.
The kids in the Gevaudan in the 1760s were just built different.
Oh, I totally agree. Because I would be a wet mess of having messed myself, sobbing, like shaking. I'd be out.
Right, like up to this point even, these kids were just built different. They instinctively like circle up. They attack this beast with their teensy knives. It rips the face off one of them and they keep going. This is just insanity. One of the boys begged the kids all to run away, to escape while the beast was distracted eating their friend. That's pretty sensible. But Jacques Portefax, one of the oldest, refused. He insisted they go after the beast and free their friend or die trying. All the kids followed him, including the one with the bitten-off cheek. They managed to corner the beast in a bog where it got stuck in a patch of quicksand, but it still had their friend in its mouth, and their knives could not penetrate its hide. The children circled around the beast, stabbing at it fiercely, aiming for the head and the eyes and its open mouth. Finally, the beast dropped the boy and managed to jump out of the quicksand. Jacques Portefax put himself between the beast and the boy so that he could not be seized again. The boy was only a little hurt on his arm, and he had a small scratch on his face. He got off easy.
The children managed to put the beast to flight. Not long after, an adult came running up. Some accounts say that the beast was fully gone by the time he got there, but others say that he got there in time to help them chase the beast off. And, as they did, they observed some odd behavior. According to one account, translated from the archives at the town of Montpellier and uploaded onto betugevaudan.com, quote, "Hearing this new enemy, the beast stood on its hind legs and ran away in a stream 1 mile further. 3 men saw the beast dive into it, go out of the water, and roll around the ground for some time. Afterwards, the beast took the road of Mazel and wolfed down a 15-year-old boy in the parish of Groses in Gevaudan." I love that description of it on its hind legs, because my dog will do that all the time when he gets excited. It's just such a little circus dog thing.
I don't think it's a circus dog thing, because this is a point where the beast is been stabbed a bunch, right? And like it's kind of in a desperate situation, maybe. I'm not sure, like, how wounded it is, but it's standing on its hind legs and ran away in a stream 1 mile further. Like, the wording is a little weird, but it kind of seems like the beast ran on its hind legs for a mile. Is that not strange?
It's weird. It's very strange. We're going to probably talk more about what the beast could be in the next episode, so I don't want to, jump and spoil things, but I do love the idea, if you're assuming it's a wolf-like beast, of it running on its hind legs. It's so silly.
Jen just wants to make this as silly as possible, and I want to make this as dark as possible.
This is because Jen has not had anything to drink in several months and is now pretty ripped off of a 1/4 of a glass of wine and a 1/8 of a hard cider.
This is my second beer.
You have a better tolerance than I do.
I never thought the day would come, but here we are.
The world is truly upside down. Welcome to 2025. This is Jen.
And Jenny.
From Ancient History Fangirl, and we're here to tell you about Jenny's scorching historical romantasy based on Alaric of the Visigoths, Enemy of My Dreams. Amanda Boucher, best-selling author of the Kingmaker Chronicle, says, quote, "This book has everything: high-stakes action, grit, ferocity, and blazing passion. Julia and Alaric are colliding storms against a backdrop of the brutal dangers of ancient Rome. They'll do anything to carve their piece out of this treacherous world and not just survive, but rule."
Enemy of My Dreams is available wherever books are sold.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
Rated T for teen.
Hey everyone, it's the best in the world, CM Punk, back to shake up WWE 2K26. This year, the show never stops. You're running the greatest spectacle on earth with the biggest roster we've ever had. Over 400 superstars and legends from every era. Stack the tables, break the rules, burn it all down. And yeah, my very own showcase, telling my story the way it should have been told. Because when the show never stops, anything is possible. Available March 13th, pre-order now.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
So, this story caught the attention of the king himself. Louis XV awarded Portefax, the bravest of the children, by this account at least. I mean, I'm not saying he was, but he's the one who gets the attention. He awarded him 300 livres and bequeathed another 350 to be split among the other children. Portefax also received a free education courtesy of the state. He wrote a memoir in 1768 at the age of 15 or so.
He'd lived such a hard life by the age of 15.
No, he actually really had.
I'm only half joking, actually.
He was 15 going on like 60.
He really was. This is a tough time to survive and also to survive a beast attack.
Anyway, so he wrote this memoir at the age of 15. He's like the one person I'm not rolling my eyes at the idea of them writing a memoir at the age of 15. As well as a report he wrote to the king describing his eyewitness encounter with the beast in detail. And the copies of this have sadly been lost because they could have really provided a lot of detail that we would want to have. It was this attack that brought the beast of the Gevaudan to the attention of the king. King Louis XV, who awarded all this money and opportunities to young Portefax and his friends, vowed that the French state itself would handle the Gevaudan's beast problem from now on.
And it was about time. By now, the beast of the Gevaudan had started making international news. Starting as early as November 1764, broadsides in newspapers such as the Parisian Gazette stoked terror in the hearts of the French populace. Everyone from Parisian chimney sweeps to the court at Versailles were riveted by this story and terrified. Soon, the news traveled throughout Europe, and the descriptions of the beast were all over the place. J. Smith, author of Monsters of the Gevaudan, Making of a Beast, said, quote, "The Gazette d'Amsterdam reported that the creature shared characteristics with both the bear and the boar, while still others saw in the beast, quote, a monstrous product of a cross between a bear and a female wolf. The Gazette de France, in its first account, invoked characteristics of both the fox and the greyhound, while also noting that the creature, quote, much larger than a wolf, had horn-like ears and teeth as sharp as a razor. A broadsheet published in January of 1765 described the beast as having a mouth like a lion, defensive tusks like those of a boar, and a back like that of a fish, covered with scales that finish in a point."
Soon, people from all over Europe were riveted, and some of them were mocking. In the UK, people were laughing at the French, making fun of them for not being able to handle their little pest control problem. This cut particularly deep right now. As we mentioned before, just a year prior in 1763, France had lost the 7 Years' War and, related, the French and Indian War in the New World. It had been a humiliating defeat that involved losing vast swaths of territory in the New World. There was undoubtedly some wounded manhood going on in France right now, which made the sting of this mockery and public humiliation at the hands of a mysterious beast even worse. This was a big reason, in early 1765, for King Louis XV to send in the professionals. Sealing his decision was the fact that January and February were particularly bad for failed beast hunts. At one point in February, Duhamel marshaled a huge hunt involving 20,000 locals.
According to J. Smith, again, the author of The Monsters of the Gevaudan, The Making of a Beast, quote, "The 4-day span from 7 to 11 February offered a condensed version of the whole sorry history of Duhamel and his dragoons in the Gevaudan. The hunts featured carnage grisly enough to shock the conscience. Admirable courage, difficult weather, unforgiving terrain, a misfiring gun, exposed human remains, feckless locals, great escapes, an exasperating close call, and, adding insult to injury, a signal failure on the part of the male hierarchy to protect a vulnerable female in distress."
I mean, it sounds like a busty lady got devoured by the beast.
As a busty lady who might get devoured by a beast, I feel very affronted by this.
Right. Admirable courage, difficult weather, unforgiving terrain, a misfired gun, bodies where they shouldn't be, severed heads all over the place. Look, this is everything I love. And there's a volcano. This is like the best story for both of us.
This is the best of both worlds, except for the bit where the busty Jen gets eaten by the beast.
Sadly, Jen gets devoured before the end of this tale.
Because it's not a beast out of one of my romance novels where devouring would be a good thing.
No, it's not devouring in the sexual fashion. It's devouring in the actual devouring fashion.
So, by now, the authorities were starting to lose faith in Duhamel. Jacques Portefeuille's heroic stand was reported to the king, and he decided to get personally involved. That month, he sent 2 professional wolf hunters, a father and son team, Jean-Charles Deneval and his son Jean-Francois. According to many accounts, they already had a bloody reputation for slaughtering wolves in Normandy, with a kill list of up to 1,200 wolves. My poor baby wolves.
So many wolves. God. Ecstatic newspaper accounts preceded the Denevals' arrival in Gevaudan. The Année littéraire published an ecstatic description from a letter written by one of the Denevals' acquaintances. Quote, "No wolf escapes him. He will often travel 50 or 60 leagues rather than give up on an animal he is pursuing. I have been assured that he has purged from the realm more than 3,000 wolves. In the heroic age, there would have been altars in his honor as with Hercules and Theseus." I mean, to be fair, this is like his college buddy writing this. It's like if they asked me for a recommendation for Jen. Be like, in the old days, there would have been altars in her honor. Other newspapers echoed these assertions, dubbing the elder Deneval the Grand Wolf Hunter of Normandy.
Number 1, Theseus is the worst and a serial killer. So, I mean, be careful with throwing that out there. And Hercules...
It's actually appropriate. These are wolf serial killers, these two.
And Hercules is kind of only a functional human being when he's being domed by an epic woman. We've talked about this before. The Denevals had a markedly different strategy than Duhamel. Whereas Duhamel organized large hunts, they utilized stealth. They kept their hunting party small and planned to hunt with a pack of 8 bloodhounds, specifically trained to hunt wolves. Newspapers rhapsodized their fearsome dogs, quote, "can pick up the scent of their prey even 24 hours after its passing." But from the moment the Denevals arrived in the Gevaudan, things went wrong. Shocker, maybe the place is cursed. Things went wrong, starting with the dogs. It took weeks to get the specially trained hunting dogs to the Gevaudan, during which time the Denevals managed to rub everyone the wrong way. Oh my goodness, it's almost like they don't like outsiders.
You seem to be picking that up.
Or maybe the outsiders were acting like dicks. I don't know, wanting to use children as bait. Let's find out.
It's an insular community, right? Number 1. So they're suspicious of outsiders and, aristocratic knobs to begin with. But the other thing is they have reason to be. Like, there are people sweeping in and using their loved ones as bait.
So, according to J. Smith, the Deneval spent weeks, quote, not by joining Duhamel on his own daily hunts, according to the original plan, or by working to gain the trust of the locals. Instead, they talked. They talked mostly about themselves, their tales of conquest, and the ease with which they expected to conquer their new enemy. With their haughty style and their polished French, the Denevals stood out from the other participants in the drama for their almost slavish devotion to a rather sophisticated French grammatical form, the passé simple. They alienated virtually every local resident with whom they came into contact, including Duhamel, who at this point, ravaged and hollow-eyed and completely broken by the hunt, was extremely cheesed off by their claim that they would wrap this up within 2 weeks. I mean, I'm sorry, boy. It's time to go home. Take a vacation in the south of France on the sunny side. Like, this didn't go well for you, babe. Like, try to get over it.
This is the south of France at this time.
It's the southeast of France, not the southwest of France, which would be on the coast and sunny.
I don't know how sunny it would be. I'm not sure.
It would be sunnier than the microclimate of the Gevaudan.
Everywhere would be. So, as they began their hunt, the Denevals struggled. Big groups were still out there scouring the woods, something they believed would only drive the beast into hiding.
Well, the locals didn't trust them. They're like, we're not going to let another person use our child as bait. I mean, or dress up in our dresses when we can barely afford clothing.
Exactly. So anyway, the Denevals didn't have authority over these large groups, and they had managed to alienate everyone, including Duhamel. Nobody wanted to follow their advice about how to do this. They were not acting in concert here. Confronted by the terrible weather, the difficult terrain, their lack of dogs, who had still not arrived by late March, and general non-cooperation of everyone around them, the Denevals lost heart rather quickly. By now, there was a sizable reward for the beast. Several times, the Denevals killed ordinary wolves which they tried to pass off as the beast, which gave them a reputation as frauds. Inevitably, this would be followed by more attacks. The months of the Denevals' hunt would prove some of the most deadly so far, with attack reports coming in from all corners of the Gevaudan.
And here's where we have another of our detailed accounts. Sometime in the spring, a pregnant mother of 6 named Jeanne Varlet grappled with the beast. It started in her walled-in backyard in Bessières, where she was watching 3 of her children, aged 10, 6, and 18 months. Geez, and she was pregnant again. Wow. Newspaper reports conflict on what happened next. Some say the beast leaped over the wall and into the backyard and immediately attacked the 10-year-old girl, who was holding the baby. Others that it first attacked the 6-year-old, grabbing him by his head. It's not clear which is true, but what we do know is that Jeanne Varlet, the pregnant mother, attacked the beast, grabbing hold of the child's legs to try to wrest them from the beast's jaws.
As soon as the beast dropped one child, though, it would grab another. According to one newspaper, the Gazette, quote, "The terrified mother went to the aid of her 2 children, removing them one by one from the mouth of the beast, which, no sooner than one had been rescued, moved on to the other." J. Smith further explains, quote, "In the Courier, instead of juggling between 2 stricken children, Varlet had to engage in an awful game of tug-of-war in an effort to save the 6-year-old. The beast had taken hold of the head, and the mother seized the child's feet, and each pulled on one side."
It's not clear exactly what happened, but we're left with this impression of a harrowing tug-of-war, during which the beast attacked most, if not all, of the children. During the struggle, both Jeanne and her children tried to attack the beast, getting their clothes ripped to shreds in the process. So eventually, the beast attacked the 6-year-old boy with a renewed fury and tried to run off with him, gripping the boy by his head. It was here that Jeanne leaped onto the beast's back and, upon being thrown off, grabbed it in what the newspapers discreetly referred to as, quote, "a sensitive part of the body," which we can assume was the testicles. So, this is a clue that we think the beast was probably male.
Interesting, but also I just want to pause and recognize how tough these people in the Gevaudan were. Like, we have, 8-year-old kids chasing it down and, attacking it in a bog. And we have this pregnant woman jumping on its back and grabbing its balls. These people were not to be reckoned with.
Well, again, these are the people who lived through the Little Ice Age. They're part of the reason that we're still here today. We are very soft compared to them. But also, you had no choice. If you didn't do these things, you would probably die. So you had to be tough.
And a lot of people didn't, and they died. Finally, Jeanne Varlet's strength gave out, and the beast fled, carrying her son away by his head. The mother rallied and chased after the beast, leaping over a wall, and now her older teenage son heard and joined the fray with a lance and a sheepdog in tow. I mean, this is probably one of those, makeshift lances with a kitchen knife. Not that impressive of a lance, but moving on. Between them, they managed to get the beast to release the 6-year-old, who had been seriously injured. When Jeanne ran to him, she found him barely alive and missing his upper lip, most of his nose, and a large swath of skin from his head. Despite immediate medical attention, the child died not long after.
Jeanne Varlet was lionized in the press. The king himself offered her a reward of 300 livres. But after this, the terrorized countryside shut down. The weather was warming, but nobody went out. If they did, they went in groups. Markets and fairs were deserted. People huddled in fear in their homes and did not want to assist in hunts or put up with any more of that bullshit from the Denevals.
Tires matter. They're the only part of your vehicle that touches the road. Tread confidently with new tires from Tire Rack. Whether you're looking for expert recommendations or know exactly what you want, Tire Rack makes it easy. Fast, free shipping, free road hazard protection, and convenient installation options. Go to TireRack.com to see tire test results, tire ratings, and consumer reviews, and be sure to check out all the special offers. TireRack.com, the way tire buying should be.
Yeah, cool!
A Lego set is a gift that always clicks. And clicks.
The end of the final lap, and we've got a champion.
And clicks. For kids who love everything on wheels, choose a Lego set. A gift that always clicks.
Kayak gets my flight, hotel, and rental car right, so I can tune out travel advice that's just plain wrong.
Bro, Skycoin. Way better than points.
Never fly during a Scorpio full moon.
Just tell the manager you'll sue. Instant room upgrade.
Stop taking bad travel advice. Start comparing hundreds of sites with Kayak and get your trip right.
Bad advice? You talking to me?
Kayak. Got that right.
Finally, a report came in that the beast had been shot on an aristocratic estate to the south. Apparently, the owner glanced out the window and saw the beast sitting on its haunches at the edge of the woods right there in his backyard. He called 3 henchmen who were loafing around the property, and they approached from several sides and managed to shoot the beast, seriously wounding it. The beast disappeared into the forest, and the shooters followed it, confident they'd soon come across its dead body. But after much searching, they'd found nothing. They sent for the Denevals, who, with what everyone saw as a shocking lack of urgency, did not even show up until the next day. Rude. The beast, meanwhile, slipped away yet again, despite leaving a very obvious trail of blood spattered on branches and trees. Finally, having managed to piss everyone off while coming no closer to killing the beast than Duhamel had, the Denevals were fired in disgrace, their reputation in tatters. The newspapers, of course, had amplified their every failure and misstep. The elder Deneval, the hero with the altar to Theseus and Hercules in his honor, that guy, he retired not long after this and died in 1769, just 3 years later. So he's kind of a victim of the beast too, in a way.
Well,
maybe I'm giving him a little bit too much empathy. I don't know.
Did kill 1,200 wolves.
That's fair. Good point.
And I'm sure not all of the 1,200 wolves needed to die. Like, I'm sure there were some that were probably targeting humans, but 1,200 is an awful lot.
Some of them were innocent. Some of them were guilty. There was no trial for the wolves.
Again, I just think of my little Yorkshire Terrier hopping around on its hind legs with his little forepaws up.
They probably would have swept him up, too. They weren't looking at those wolves too closely.
So then, in June of 1765, the king sent another hunter to the field. Francois Antoine, the king's personal arquebus bearer and lieutenant of the hunt. Antoine was a social climber. There were few ways to improve your social rank in France in the 1700s, pre-revolution. One was how Antoine's family did it, starting several generations back, by managing to land increasingly important positions in the royal household. Their speciality had to do with the royal hunt, combining that with increasingly advantageous marriages to women with nice dowries, and Antoine's family had risen in its fortunes markedly. Antoine was over 70 at this point, but given his social climbing station, he had risen to one of the highest ranks, closest to the king. In serving as his personal gun bearer, he was very, very determined to solve the king's little beast problem.
By now, there had been extensive news coverage of the beast of the Gevaudan, as we've said, and wild theories abounded about what the beast actually was. Some more pedestrian, some fantastical, and everything in between. Antoine was a beast skeptic. He thought the beast was going to turn out to be a wolf, probably a perfectly ordinary wolf, although maybe on the very large side. At least, that's how it started. The summer of 1765 in the Gevaudan was rainy and cold and miserable. Antoine came to the area with a team of 14 hunters plus hunting dogs, but as he tramped through the difficult landscape of the Gevaudan, he made little progress. He reported in detail about the conditions he saw there.
From J. Smith, quote, "The entire afflicted region," he reported, consisted of high mountains separated by gorges or deep valleys, most of which contained small rivers and streams. The sides of the mountains were, quote, "steep and untamed, cut by ravines, topped with rocks or covered with thick and rock-filled woods, concealing deep and inaccessible caverns that serve as dens for wolves and other wild animals," unquote, within the quote. Hunters could traverse this hazardous land only by treading lightly, for most of the existing paths proved, quote, "impractical for man and beast due to the precipices one encounters," end of quote within a quote. Perhaps worst of all was an infinity of natural springs played havoc with the ground beneath one's feet, creating plentiful but well-disguised marshes that trapped horses and men and imperiled anyone hardy enough to brave the area's rugged hillsides, end quote.
Antoine, unlike hunters before him, developed good relationships with the locals, at least initially. He did not drag them out on massive futile hunts. But also, he didn't use their children as live bait. Who'd have thought that that might improve relations with the locals?
Such a small thing, right?
He did not raid their wig stash. But also, he had compassion for their circumstances. He wrote to his superiors about their poverty in empathetic terms, saying, quote, by J. Smith, "Most," quote within the quote, "could not subsist without the milk and cheese produced by their cows, which only added to the tragic character of the beast's life or death contest with area shepherds." In a letter to Bienvilliers, he noted that the, quote within the quote, "misery is so great here that almost all of the inhabitants lack bread." Antoine noted that the peasants who did show up for group hunts were often undernourished to the point of fainting from starvation. Perhaps a reason these group hunts were rarely successful. It wasn't that the locals were lazy and incompetent. They were hungry. They were too hungry to function.
However, after a month and a half of zero success, Antoine's relationship with the locals also started to fray. He complained to his superiors about how lazy the locals were. Nobody showed up to his local hunts, and when he put out a reward for wolf corpses, nobody bothered to hunt them. In one embarrassing incident, 2 of his men/colleagues got lured into a bog by locals playing a practical joke. And we'll have more on that later.
It's kind of a significant story, and we will get into it later, but for now, you just need to know that it happened.
Time stretched on. In August of 1765, a young woman called Marie-Jeanne Vallée encountered the beast.
Marie-Jeanne Vallée is the last of our very detailed accounts of people who faced off with the beast. She was about 20 years old, and she was accompanied by her 16-year-old sister and a group of women as they walked across a footbridge that crossed a small stream. As they crossed, the beast rose up out of the forest and leaped on top of Marie-Jeanne. She managed to stab it in the chest with a bayonet, which was probably just one of those sticks with a knife at the end, whereupon the beast dropped into the river, rolled around for a bit, which seems to be a thing it did, and then disappeared into the woods. And this is quite similar to Jacques Portefax's account. It was a strange encounter. Marie-Jeanne described an animal with, according to J. Smith, quote, "a very large and flat head, big teeth, a body much broader in front than in the rear, and a black back. She claimed to see it raise a paw to its injury, crying terribly as it dropped into the river."
Oh, poor baby.
Poor little guy. He's just hungry like everybody else.
Poor little murderous beast.
He's not a bad beast. He's just misunderstood.
This is why I got eaten. Went right for the boobs first.
Look, I got eaten because I wanted to pet the beast. I tried to baby talk it, and it ate me.
Fair enough. Don't infantilize it.
Anyway, when Antoine examined her bayonet, he saw that the beast's blood was on it up to 3 inches in, a very significant stab wound. The dogs followed the trail of its dripping blood for over 400 steps into the forest without finding the body. Once again, the beast had vanished.
This was by now a kind of familiar story. The beast had developed a reputation for surviving wounds that would have killed any other animal. Time and again, it was fired on, it was wounded, it was seen limping and crying from its wounds, but it still dragged itself up and disappeared into the trees and ravines and gorges of the Gevaudan. People started to whisper that no ordinary bullet could fell it. The press caught up the story, comparing Marie-Jeanne to a modern-day Joan of Arc. She was nicknamed the Maid of Gevaudan. In 1995, a statue of her fighting off the beast with a bayonet was installed in the town of Auvers, where it stands to this day. The king, however, declined to give her a monetary reward. Wonder if it's maybe because she's a lady, king.
Well, he did give a monetary reward to the last person who was a lady who fought off the beast. So, I think the king is just kind of over it by now. Anyway, finally, on September 20th, a very large wolf was killed on the Royal Abbey grounds in Chazes. A lot of wolves had been killed in hunts before this, but this time, people were convinced that this one had to be the beast. It was a ginormous wolf. The populace was tired and brutalized and traumatized and thoroughly sick of this shit. This was the beast. This had to be the beast. This exceptionally large gray wolf weighing about 130 pounds, which I understand is pretty big for a wolf. It was nicknamed Le Loup de Chazes, which means the wolf of Chazes.
So I used to dog sit for a German Shepherd mix that was about 85 to 90 pounds. It was a huge, I'll give Danny a picture for the show notes. This would be something that was like another 50 pounds bigger, like heavier and bigger. Like this dog was like a little pony I could ride.
Yeah, so this is a real big wolf. Antoine gave this official statement, quote, "We declare by the present report signed from our hand, we never saw a big wolf that could be compared to this one. Hence, we believe this could be the fearsome beast that caused so much damage. Marie-Jeanne and her sister were dragged in to confirm whether this was in fact the beast that they'd seen. They gave a very lukewarm and questionably hesitant yes. I imagine that they were very heavily pressured.
Is this the wolf?
Is it?
It better be.
The answer is yes or yes. Several other peasants who'd seen the beast in person also swore that this was definitely the beast.
Meanwhile, Marie-Jeanne was like, if you give me some money, this could be the wolf, this could be the king, I'm hungry.
And actually, Marie-Jeanne Vallée absolutely would have said that. I want to do maybe a Patreon episode of a Where Are They Now? Various characters from the Beast of the Gevaudan, and Marie-Jeanne had an interesting background, let's just say.
Oh, I'm here for it. So, Antoine's son loaded the body of the wolf onto his horse and took it to Paris, where he had it stuffed. Adding to the strangeness, he claimed an unbearable odor emanated from the corpse. At Versailles, he was celebrated as a hero. The taxidermied body of the large wolf was exhibited in the king's gardens. People of the time, gentlemen scholars as they were, newspaper reporters, and others couldn't get their story straight about whether it was a wolf or a hyena, with the animal standing stuffed right in front of them. Some claim that due to its huge size and fearsome teeth, it had to be a hyena. But wolf or hyena, the important thing here was that the beast was dead. I mean, it could have been that the taxidermist, decided to Frankenstein that animal a little bit. I'm just saying.
Take some liberties, just make it a little scarier, potentially.
I mean, I might.
Meanwhile, Antoine himself finished the job, flushing out what he believed was the beast's female partner and its puppies. Upon killing one of the puppies, Antoine discovered it had a set of dew claws, a hereditary malformation that's basically like an extra set of claws that's over the normal ones. We'll get to that and what it could mean in a bit. So that was it, right? Antoine had killed the beast officially. It was, as he thought all along, a very large wolf. He'd said it all along. He was right, okay? He was right. It's just a big wolf, you guys. Antoine joined his son in Paris in November, where he was rewarded with fame, accolades, new titles, permission to change his family's coat of arms to reflect his outstanding victory, very important to him as a social climber, and over 9,000 livres, which was a fortune. For 2 months after Antoine shot his wolf, all was quiet in the Gevaudan. But the next brutal killings happened on December 2nd. The beast was still out there.
And that beast was hungry.
And we will tell you the rest of the story in the next episode.
That's it for this week. Join us next week for the second half of the story of the beast of the Gevaudan, or maybe in 2 weeks. We'll see. In the meantime, join us on social media. We are currently most active on Instagram at Ancient History Fangirl. You can also find us at ancienthistoryfangirl.com. And you can join our Patreon for extra episodes. That is patreon.com/ancienthistoryfangirl. And I have been doing some interesting stuff with Herodotus's histories where he gives us some cryptoids, right? Some gold-digging ants and something else I haven't told Jenny about yet, but it's coming.
If you're interested in more cryptids.
To be honest with you, our Patreon is the only reason we're still able to keep the podcast running. This is a full-time job, and both of us also have full-time jobs on top of that. So if you want us to keep making this podcast, if you want us to keep telling you these wild stories, please throw us a couple bucks on Patreon. It means the world to us.
Or maybe more than a couple of bucks because things are getting expensive, let's be real.
Yeah, I can't afford eggs.
Yeah. We have some patrons to thank, and this is a long list because it's been a while since the last time we recorded a main feed episode. The ones that we recorded that have dropped recently, we did record at the beginning of the summer, so we've got a lot of people to get to. Apologies for those of you who had to wait. And we also apologize for anyone whose name we mispronounced. We really hope we don't. Fingers crossed on this.
Huge thank you to Katie, just Katie.
Carlos Lopez.
Brittany, just Brittany.
I Break for Nodes.
Sophie Heckla.
Amanda Westman.
Parva, just Parva.
Catriel Hubbard.
Sophia Rodriguez Engelbrecht.
Brian Thundel.
Maria, just Maria.
Ginger Paulson.
Georgia Comer.
Adriana, just Adriana.
Jesse Holsizer.
Rachel Ballard.
Robin O'Malley.
Cody, just Cody.
Ezzy, just Ezzy.
Victoria Brady.
The Inner Light, Kim Swain.
Beth S.
Caroline Sadowski.
And Noah Craver. Thank you all so much. And thank you all so much for listening. And we will see you whenever we see you next.
There's a world where legends race across city skylines, romance blossoms in glittering ballrooms, and there's magic around every corner. It's a world known to many as Great Britain. You've seen the action on screen. Now visit the real star of the show. Visit Great Britain. To discover more, go to tripadvisor.com/Great Britain.